Everyone, this is Oren, and it's the year-end time to do top 10 lists. And as a result, why I'm not going to do 2019 because I have not seen enough of it. But why not 2018? It's not that far away in our past. Let's really go back in time to 2018. My top 10 is going to start with Leave No Trace, which is a film by Deborah Granick, who got a Best Picture nomination in 2010 for the film Winter's Bone. And like that film, this film also shows a real penchant for capturing the parts of Americana that are far removed from city centers. I like to think of this version as a less obnoxious take on 2016's Captain Fantastic, which is about a guy living off the grid, raising his kids, and just being all, I'm raising my kids off the grid, I'm different, we really just want to be against the man. In this case, the character, brilliantly played by Ben Foster, is all about, he just organically is that way. But the conflict is that his daughter, played by Thomasin McKenzie, is tethered to him because of that emotional bond, but it raises the question about whether, that she's living a proper childhood, and those two conflicting values really intersect there. I think it's I don't know if I love the characters, but I was really curious by them. My number 9 film is going to be Free Solo. It's a documentary, and to be honest, I actually don't like documentaries a lot. I spend enough time in front of the screen that I usually feel like I'm better off just reading a book or going to a museum if I want to learn about something. Documentaries are often obnoxious, to be honest, and I don't know, maybe other people like him. They like to talk about him at wine and cheese parties, but it's about, a lot of times documentaries, a guy's interested in something and takes a lot of still photos, not very cinematic. He has people talking to the camera about it, not very cinematic. There's just a lot of rock music that he imposes his musical tastes on top of it. This is a very cinematic documentary. It's a film that has a lot of suspense because it's about a guy climbing a cliff and he could die at any moment. And it also raises the question of our own voyeurism and our own complicity in dangerous entertainment, like the Hunger Games or the NFL, where we're actively watching people hurt themselves for our entertainment. Number 8 is If Beale Street Could Talk. It's one of a number of films about the black experience that activism has brought about more. We're seeing a lot of these stories that are kind of telling the same theme, which is black people are oppressed, but if it's done really emotional and it's being very hyper-specific and, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't know if this many films of this brand are necessary, but this film is a really good film. It's made by Barry Jenkins, who made Moonlight, and I think it shows a great mastery of time. He shifts between the past and the present a lot, and I think it shows a better story because it's like about something rather than just kid grows up in Miami. It's a story about a man who's wrongly convicted, and it leaves open ends of what's going to happen in the future. And I really kind of thought it was a really great relationship to its story. My number 7 film, and this is a film that I'm going to be crazy because no one is going to rank this above If Beale Street Could Talk except me, is the popcorn comedy Tag. It's a film based on a true story about a group of friends who played tag, the schoolyard game tag, long after graduating high school for like 20 years, 1 month a year, and it just made me laugh really hard. But a lot of times the comedy that can make you laugh, sometimes there's a special comedy that you just kind of marvel at its humorous structure. I think this film really milked the laughs out of sort of like the straight man, funny man kind of duo with that reporter who just was completely baffled by what she was seeing. She was like an audience surrogate. And I think the film has also, it has some great themes, and that's why I think the movie will be very memorable to me for quite a time. Part of it is just that you don't necessarily have to give up fun when you become an adult, and that friendships are worth preserving. They come at a cost, but it's worth it. My next film after that, which is film number 6, is going to be The Favorite. Elizabeth II and Elizabeth I and King George, they're monarchs that we've heard a lot about, but I love that this film talks about one of the less strong monarchs. This is Queen Anne in the early 18th century, and she didn't have as much of an effect, and this makes her a really interesting political allegory for the fact that sometimes being close to power, being friends with the monarch or whatever, is going to help you. Power is for those who are friends with the monarch. It's for and the way that these two ladies of the court try to sway the court for power is really, really fascinating. It is a film that is really notable in the way that it's shot, in the visuals and the set design. It's by design. It's not a film whose technical elements are designed to blend in. And I think that works. I might have ranked it a little bit higher because I feel like it's a series of vignettes. It's a series of almost like comic sketches. And if there was if they tied together a little bit more towards a whole, I would have really liked it. But there was so much richness in this film. My number 5 film is going to be Crazy Rich Asians. This film, it had so much thematically, like old versus new money, and preserving. Are you pigeonholed by your cultural upbringing? Are you to what degree does fit? Can you form a connection with a lifelong partner when you have that class difference? Just simply acculturation. There's all these films, and it's so wonderful that we got to see this part of the world, and it's visually rich. Some people call it kind of affluence porn. And it's a beautiful love story that I teared up at the end, but it's also I felt like the two people at the center were also kind of heroes of their own story, and I could see that hero's journey in it. My number 4 film, is a film called Disobedience, which is a bit more of an independent film. I've spent some time on the fringes of Orthodox Jewish culture, so this was really interesting to see the accuracies of this film and to see sort of the dark side or the downside of a culture where everyone really values conformity and really values a certain ancient model of living. It's a film that is really tense, kind of like a David Cronenberg film, where something's up. I didn't know what the reveal would be, and it really, I've never seen Rachel McAdams act better. Rachel Weisz, best performance of the year of any category, is her in this film. Alessandra Nivola is brilliant. These 3 characters, they have these intersecting stories in this life that 2 of them aren't supposed to be living in this ancient Orthodox town. It's absolutely amazing. My number 3 film is going to be Death of Stalin. Armando Iannucci loves making political satire, but he's been doing the same shtick over it. In the Thick of It, The Loop. What else is there? In the Thick of It, The Loop, Veep, and whatever it's called. And he, but to set that style of pitter-patter dialogue in 1950s Russia at the height of totalitarianism, that's like raising the bar times 10. The film is so clever in its humor. I might call it, in a sense, the best outright comedy of the decade, even. That it finds comedy among such tragedy. I feel that Iannucci has a little bit of sameness to his dialogue in some cases, but in this case I feel like the characters played by Michael Palin and Jeffrey Tambor and Simon whatever his name is and Steve Buscemi are all really distinctive, and that was a really impressive thing that I've never seen him do before. I feel like he's not as Sorkin-esque as Sorkin is because his characters all have a sense of frustration rather than smartness, although they are also really smart characters. My number 2 film is First Reformed. The film is about, I've never seen a film that makes environmentalism so, enthralling and sexy. It's about a guy who's a preacher, played so brilliantly by Ethan Hawke, who counsels a couple where the husband doesn't want to raise a kid because global warming is going to make it that they have an impossible future. It's a film that's meditative, slow, and profound. You think about it for a very long time. I think it had a little bit of dead space. It's like, what do you do with that I think that I wish that it found a way to pad out its running time just a little better, but it also had a really great sense of capturing the wintertime in Albany and, how that sort of related to the inner state of Ethan Hawke's character. And my number 1 film is going to be a film that's going to be controversial. It was controversial, but not really. It really shouldn't have been because as Taylor Swift says, the haters are going to hate. It was Green Book because it won the Best Picture, and last year's Best Picture was just an all-out slugfest among what could be more woke or what could be more giving a positive message, and it got all kind of accusations that were really false. Like, the historic records about the film were false. It's basically a fairly simple film about a black guy and a white guy who's got some challenged and slightly bigoted views going around the South on a piano tour, and the two basically are very complex characters who sort of have very difficult conversations, and I think the film didn't do its job if it didn't provoke some anger or ire, because the film's thesis is that we are an extremely dangerously polarized country that is unable to have conversations with one another, and we need a film like this We need to sometimes conversations are difficult. They're on PC. And on another note, the film was also very funny at points. And you know why? Because sometimes humor derives from released tension, and it's that exact type of un-PC jokes that the movie treaded in that allowed us to sort of shine a mirror into the discomfort we have into talking about serious matters with one another. And I think the film was absolutely brilliant, an absolutely necessary film, and I absolutely recommend it, and that's 10 in 10 minutes and 26 seconds.